imagine for a second that a family pays, like, $28,000 to purchase a bride.
Right.
The transaction is totally complete, the money clears, and this new bride arrives at the house. But when she walks through the door, she just sits there.
Just does nothing.
Exactly, nothing. She doesn't know how to cook a single meal. She doesn't know how to clean the floors. She doesn't understand the most basic mechanics of how this household even operates.
Oh, wow.
So naturally, the family is furious, right? They look at this person sitting idly in the living room, and they just demand a refund.
Yeah, I mean, you would.
Right. Now, I want you to imagine sitting in a closed-door, highly secretive theological lecture, and the teacher standing at the front of the room points directly at you and says, "That bride is you."
That is just wow.
Yeah, and the purchaser who is currently demanding a refund, that is God. Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
It is such a profoundly jarring way to start a lesson, you know? I mean, you walk into a room expecting to learn about ancient texts, maybe gain some spiritual peace, and instead you are immediately hit with this massive cosmic debt.
Right, you're instantly in the red.
Exactly. The speaker isn't welcoming you at all. They're establishing a transactional deficit from the very first minute. You owe something massive, and currently you are failing to deliver.
It's so intense.
Yeah.
Today, we are immersing ourselves in this fascinating and frankly relentless transcript of a lecture. The document we are working from is simply titled 2023-0803, The Leaven of Parables 1.
A very clinical title for something so intense.
Right. But our mission today isn't to debate traditional theology or read a standard religious text. We are here to decode a highly specific, intricate system of allegorical interpretation.
And it is intricate.
Very. We are stepping into a worldview where absolutely nothing, and I mean literally nothing, in the sacred text is literal.
Everything is code.
Everything. From a tiny seed you plant in the ground, to a lump of yeast in your kitchen, to a mother nursing her newborn child. It's actually all a secret, encrypted code about human transformation.
The environment we are stepping into here is crucial to understand, too. This source material gives us a rare, unvarnished look into a highly controlled lecture setting.
Yeah, you really get a feel for the room.
You really do. This is not a polished paperback you buy at an airport bookstore. We are analyzing the raw transcript of a teacher speaking to a hand-picked, thoroughly vetted audience.
A very specific crowd.
Right. And the tone is authoritative. It is demanding, it is occasionally mocking, and it is entirely focused on the mechanics of interpretation. The speaker is essentially attempting to rewire how their audience processes reality.
That is exactly what makes it so fascinating from an objective, almost forensic standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, the source insists that understanding these parables, breaking this code, is not for everyone.
Oh, definitely not.
No. It is an exclusive operation meant only for a chosen few who have been selected to find the real meaning hidden behind these metaphors.
What's fascinating here is how the speaker frames the parables as a deliberate filter.
A filter.
Yeah, to keep the uninitiated out while making the current audience feel chosen and special. What the speaker is building is this massive manipulative architecture.
Which is what we're going to break down today. By the end of this deep dive, the goal is that we will understand exactly how this speaker constructs that architecture, piece by piece.
Right down to the smallest details.
Yeah, until something as simple as a loaf of bread on your counter looks like a tool for psychological dismantling.
We really have to start where the speaker starts, which is laying the foundation of the cipher itself. Before they even get to the bride price or the bread, they present a foundational premise.
Which is?
That sacred texts from start to finish are entirely prophetic parables. The original terminology they use translates to metaphor or allegory.
But they don't mean like Aesop's fables.
They are emphatically not talking about Aesop's fables. A parable in this room is not a helpful little story about a tortoise and a hare designed to teach children about patience.
Right, it's not a moral compass at all.
No, it's a cryptographic lock. The speaker asserts that sacred texts were written entirely in parables because the reality they describe had not happened yet.
Because you can't write history before it happens.
Exactly. You cannot write a literal history of the future. So the divine author uses contemporary physical items as placeholders. They use the material world as a metaphor for a future spiritual reality.
And to demonstrate this, the speaker pulls out this historical anecdote that completely throws the audience off balance.
The Zhu Yuanzhang story?
Yes, they bring up Zhu Yuanzhang, the founding emperor of the Ming dynasty. Now, historically speaking, if you read the accounts of Zhu Yuanzhang, he was a brilliant military strategist.
But not exactly known for his looks.
No, the historical records are actually quite blunt about his physical appearance. He was heavily scarred, he had this prominent protruding jaw, he was universally documented as being a very ugly man.
The historical consensus is very clear on his physical attributes, yeah.
So the speaker in our transcript poses a hypothetical to the room. They say, look, if this sacred text were just history, if it were a literal photograph of the past, the author would just write down that Zhu Yunzhang was very ugly.
Which is just a literal fact.
Right. But if the text is a prophetic parable, it doesn't state the literal truth. Instead, the text describes him as a black loach.
A black loach.
Yeah. Now, a loach is a bottom-dwelling, slippery, dark fish that hides in the mud. So the speaker tells the audience the black loach is the parable. Zhu Yunzhang is the reality.
So the parable is actively designed to hide the reality.
Exactly. This is a massive shift in epistemology.
Yeah.
I mean, the speaker is essentially saying to the audience that everything your eyes and ears tell you about history is a lie.
Or at least a massive distraction.
Yeah. If you read the phrase black loach and you start studying marine biology, or you start thinking about actual fish, you have completely failed the test.
You miss the point entirely.
Right. You were supposed to be looking for an emperor. The text is intentionally designed to obscure the truth from the masses. It is a filter.
Think about what that does to a person's brain, though. If I convince you that a historical text about an emperor is actually a coded message about a bottom-feeding fish.
And that only you know how to decode it.
Right, and that only I know how to connect the fish to the emperor, I have just untethered you from objective reality.
Completely untethered. You can no longer trust a history book. You can't trust a dictionary. You can't even trust your own basic reading comprehension.
The only thing you can trust is the teacher holding the decoder ring.
It's like ultimate confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Isn't this basically like an escape room?
How do you mean?
Well, the text is designed so that once you are inside the logic of it, every random clue seems essential to the master plot.
Oh, that is a great analogy. That untethering is highly effective for group cohesion. It creates a state of enforced dependency.
Because you can't read it on your own.
Exactly. You cannot navigate this text alone because the literal words are deliberately deceiving you. You need the guide. But the speaker doesn't just make the audience feel dependent.
They make them feel special, too.
Very special. They move from historical anecdotes to deeply personal, targeted manipulation. The speaker actually singles out a student in the room, someone they refer to as Sister Fang.
Oh, yeah. The Sunshine Golden Dragon encounter.
Yes.
The speaker looks directly at the student and asks, essentially, do you think you just stumbled in here today? Do you think meeting Sister Fang across from the Sunshine Golden Dragon was just a random coincidence?
And the Sunshine Golden Dragon is presumably a restaurant or landmark in their city.
Right, just a normal place.
Yeah.
And the speaker explicitly says, no, it wasn't a coincidence. God arranged for you to be standing at the Sunshine Golden Dragon at that exact second so that you would be brought to this specific room.
To hear this specific teaching.
Yeah. The mechanics of that claim are worth dissecting. By stripping away the concept of coincidence, the speaker elevates a totally mundane, everyday encounter on a city street into a cosmic appointment.
It's heavy.
It frames the confusing nature of the parables as a deliberate filter to keep the uninitiated out. But for you, the person who is cosmically directed to the Sunshine Golden Dragon, you have been granted access.
It assigns this huge burden of destiny to the listener.
It really does.
Going back to the escape room analogy, it works perfectly here. But let's take it a step further. In an actual escape room, you pay $20, you get locked in a room, and you know it's a game.
Right. You're aware of the context.
Yeah, you look at a tilted book on a shelf or a flickering light bulb, and you know someone placed it there as a clue. But what the leader in this transcript is doing is convincing the audience that the escape room is reality.
And the outside world is the illusion. Exactly. Once you accept the logic of this hermeneutic, every random occurrence, like a missed bus, a chance meeting at a restaurant, a strange dream, becomes a crucial clue designed by a higher power just for you.
The psychological weight of that is staggering. I mean, if the entire universe is an escape room designed for your spiritual testing, you can never relax.
Never. Every moment is high stakes.
Which loops us perfectly back to the $28,000 bride price metaphor. The speaker isn't just saying you are lucky to be here.
No, they're saying someone paid for you.
They're saying a massive investment was made to secure your presence in this cosmic escape room.
The socio-economic context of the bride price is what makes it such a visceral metaphor. In cultures where a bride price is customary, it is a literal transactional valuation of a human being.
A literal cash value.
Right. The family pools their resources, they hand over a massive sum of cash, and in return, they expect labor, obedience, and the continuation of the family line.
So when the speaker says, God paid $200,000 for you and right now you don't even know how to cook,
They are weaponizing imposter syndrome.
they are entirely weaponizing it and creating an artificial debt. If I tell you that you owe me a massive sum and the only way to pay it back is to successfully decode these parables under my instruction, I have completely shifted your motivation.
You aren't sitting in that lecture hall out of curiosity anymore.
Not at all. You are sitting there to avoid being returned. You are sitting there to justify your own existence to a divine purchaser.
And the phrasing the speaker uses is so specific.
Oh, it's brutal. They mock the idea of the bride just sitting around being motherly and nagging. They demand actual utility.
It's an incredibly stressful environment to place a learner in.
Yeah.
You are essentially told that your baseline existence is inadequate and debt-ridden.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah. If you don't grasp the secret knowledge being handed down, you are a failed financial asset. So the immediate question for anyone sitting in that room is, how do I become useful?
If I am a clueless bride, how do I learn to cook?
Exactly. How do we go from being an empty, useless investment to actually functioning within this spiritual household?
The speaker answers that by introducing the very first mechanism of their cipher. They argue that you cannot understand the parables, you cannot pay back the debt, until you master the foundational concept of the seed.
The seed.
Yes. In the source material, the speaker leans heavily into the linguistic structure of the Chinese language to make this point.
This part is such a fascinating use of linguistics to build a theological trap.
It really is clever.
The Chinese character for seed is zi. But as the speaker points out, that suffix is attached to almost everything related to the origin of life.
Right, they list quite a few examples.
Yeah, you have zongzi, which means seeds for a plant. You have guzi, which means grains. Luanzi means eggs. And jingzi means sperm.
So they build this overwhelming linguistic case.
Right, that whether you are talking about a plant, an animal, or a human being, the origin of life is fundamentally tied to this single concept of the seed.
They use the universal law of biology to create a sense of absolute, undeniable truth. I mean, it is very hard to argue with the biology of a seed.
You can't really debate that.
No. But the speaker then takes that biological fact and pivots sharply into metaphor. A seed, they argue, cannot fulfill its potential in a void.
Right.
If you hold a grain of wheat on a sterile table, it will sit there forever. It requires a specific environment to activate. It must be planted in the ground, or it must be placed in a vessel, like a barn or a cup.
And this is where the trap snaps shut.
Tell me about it.
The speaker poses a question to the room. They ask, when the sacred text talks about a vessel holding a seed, or the ground receiving a grain, what is it actually talking about?
And the answer they provide redefines the entire lecture.
Completely. The vessel is not an object. The ground is not literal dirt in a field. The vessel represents a human being, and the seed represents the word, the divine teaching.
It is a total flip from agriculture to anthropology. The physical world is entirely erased in favor of human spiritual development.
So it's never really about farming.
Never. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes how you read any story. A farmer planting a field is actually a teacher trying to instill ideas into human minds.
The dirt is the human brain. The seed is the idea.
Exactly.
You know, here's where it gets really interesting for me. I was looking at this dynamic, the vessel and the seed, and it maps so perfectly onto how we understand modern technology.
Oh, like a computer.
Exactly like hardware and software. The human body, the human mind, that is the vessel. It's the empty hardware.
Right.
You can have a beautifully designed, incredibly expensive laptop, but if it has no operating system installed, it is completely useless. It's just an expensive paperweight.
It cannot perform a single function on its own.
Right. The seed, the divine teaching, is the software. You have to install the software into the empty hardware to get any kind of life or utility out of it.
That is a highly effective modern equivalent, particularly because it highlights the vulnerability of the system. I mean, the hardware is entirely neutral.
It doesn't generate its own software.
Exactly. A laptop doesn't spontaneously write its own operating system. It waits to be programmed. By framing the human being as the vessel or the hardware, the speaker completely strips the individual of their agency.
Because you're just waiting around.
Right. You are empty until the teacher installs the correct seed into your mind.
It removes any internal moral compass. If you are just a vessel, you aren't inherently good or bad. You are just waiting to be filled.
Like a blank slate, but in a menacing way.
Yeah. Because if a computer acts maliciously, we don't blame the plastic keyboard. We blame the malware that was installed. The speaker is essentially telling the audience that you have no internal validity.
Your only worth comes from the specific teachings I am implanting into you.
That's a scary thought.
Furthermore, it creates a profoundly anthropocentric worldview. It flattens all of nature. The oceans, the trees, the animals, they have no intrinsic value in this framework.
They just exist as props.
Exactly. They only exist to serve as a giant interactive dictionary of metaphors to explain human spiritual development. The entire universe is reduced to a chalkboard used to teach you a lesson.
It's an incredibly human-centric way of viewing the universe. But sticking with that hardware and software analogy, what happens if you install the wrong software?
Or a corrupted one.
Right. Or what if you install an operating system that is fundamentally obsolete? If the vessel is waiting to be filled, the quality of the nourishment or the data being put into it is a matter of life and death.
It absolutely is.
And this brings us to one of the most jarring, controversial sections of the entire transcript. The speaker takes a concept that pretty much every human culture on Earth views as universally wholesome and life-giving, and they turn it into a symbol of spiritual decay.
They attack the concept of milk.
They really go after milk. The source material tackles a passage from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24.
Which is a famous prophetic warning concerning the apocalypse, the end times.
Yeah. And the passage includes a very specific warning that says, woe to women who are pregnant or nursing, literally giving milk to infants in those days.
Now, if you are looking at that text like a photograph, if you are reading it literally, it makes complete terrifying sense.
Oh, absolutely. If an apocalypse is happening, if cities are burning and you have to flee into the mountains to survive, being 9 months pregnant is a nightmare.
Or trying to keep a newborn baby quiet and fed while running for your life.
It's a logistical impossibility. It sounds like a highly practical, literal warning about the horrors of war.
But remember, the primary rule of this specific room is that nothing is literal. The historical or logistical reading is discarded entirely.
So how do they read it?
The speaker aggressively reinterprets this warning. In their allegorical system, milk is not a physical liquid.
Of course not.
No, milk represents a very basic, infantile, rudimentary form of spiritual teaching. It is a liquid. It requires no chewing, no digestive effort, no teeth.
It goes down easy.
Exactly. It goes down easy. It is designed for babies.
So the speaker looks at the audience and asks this hypothetical. What happens if a mother continues to feed only milk to a child who is 20 years old?
It's a grotesque image.
It is. If you have a fully grown adult and you never give them solid food, you never force them to chew or process complex nutrients, what is the result?
And the speaker does not hold back here.
Not at all. They state that you will create a mentally disabled adult.
The linguistic choice there is incredibly harsh, and it is meant to shock the audience.
It definitely works.
The speaker is arguing that a mother who refuses to wean her child is not showing maternal love. She's committing an act of developmental sabotage.
So she's actually hurting the kid.
Precisely. Therefore, within the cipher, the woe to nursing mothers in the end times has absolutely nothing to do with literal women or babies.
So what is it?
It is a severe, targeted condemnation of spiritual teachers who keep their followers infantile. The nursing mother is the bad leader.
The nursing mother is the bad leader. Wow. Okay, let's unpack this, because calling the followers mentally disabled for needing comfort is incredibly severe.
It's extremely severe.
I mean, the nursing mother is a spiritual guide who only feeds their congregation basic, easy, comforting teachings. They provide emotional support, they provide simple moral platitudes, but they refuse to provide the solid food that requires intense intellectual and spiritual effort to digest.
This raises an important question about how comfort can actually be the enemy of growth in this framework.
But it's like firing a kindergarten teacher because they aren't teaching calculus. Isn't there a place for basic comfort?
You would think so.
I just have to stop and genuinely wrestle with the mechanics of what the speaker is doing here. Because calling people mentally disabled for needing basic comfort is basically a form of verbal abuse masquerading as spiritual tough love.
It is a very manipulative tactic.
The speaker is taking the ultimate image of maternal care, a mother nursing her child, and twisting it into a metaphor for intellectual stagnation. They are weaponizing the concept of comfort.
Which leaves the follower feeling completely exposed.
Think about the psychological damage that inflicts on a follower. If you're struggling, if you're hurting, and you seek out comfort, the framework tells you that you are acting like a 20-year-old demanding breast milk.
It shames the basic human need for safety. You are identifying the exact mechanism of control here.
It just isolates them.
By pathologizing the desire for comfort, the speaker isolates the follower from any soft, supportive environments. However, the speaker justifies this severity by invoking the apocalyptic time frame.
Right, because it's the end times.
Yes, they are referencing a text about the end times. The argument they would make is that in a state of absolute emergency, the rules of peacetime development are suspended.
That makes sense in a twisted way.
If a building is on fire, you don't gently coax someone out of bed, you drag them out. The speaker views the audience as soldiers who have been drafted on the eve of a cataclysm, so coddling is viewed as a fatal error.
I hear that defense, the whole wartime boot camp excuse. The idea that a drill sergeant isn't there to make you feel loved. They're there to break down your civilian habits so you survive combat.
That's the logic.
If they give you warm milk and a blanket on the battlefield, you're going to get shot. But the problem with the boot camp analogy is that an actual military boot camp has an end date.
You eventually graduate.
Exactly. You graduate. The war ends. In this theological framework, the end times is a perpetual state of emergency.
The building is always on fire.
Always. The follower is never allowed to rest. They're never allowed to seek comfort because the apocalypse is always just around the corner. It's a recipe for profound psychological burnout.
It is an environment of perpetual high-stakes stress, which is exactly why the speaker's mockery of other traditions is so effective in keeping the audience engaged.
They need a distraction.
They need the audience to feel superior to outsiders to justify the stress they are enduring. So the speaker brings up the story of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, reaching enlightenment under the Bodhi tree.
Right. A really famous part of that historical narrative is that before his final meditation, he is near death from extreme starvation.
He was an ascetic.
Yeah. And a young woman offers him a bowl of rice milk. He drinks it, regains his strength, and achieves enlightenment.
And the speaker in our transcript actively mocks scholars and literalists who debate the historical trivia of this moment.
Like the details of the milk.
Right. They joke about people arguing over whether it was cow's milk, goat's milk, or human milk. The speaker argues that debating the zoological origin of the Buddha's milk misses the entire point of the parable.
Because it's not literal milk.
Exactly. In their view, the milk was a metaphor for a specific basic teaching that brought him out of extreme asceticism. To argue about the cow is to look at the finger pointing at the moon, rather than looking at the moon itself.
They do the exact same thing with Guanyin, the bodhisattva of compassion.
Oh, this is a fascinating example.
Historically, in earlier texts, Guanyin is often depicted as a male or androgynous figure. But in later Chinese traditions, Guanyin is almost universally depicted as a beautiful woman in flowing white robes.
So what does the speaker do with that?
The speaker calls this robe a wedding dress. They point to the audience members from Chongqing, who apparently have a cultural affinity for Guanyin, and they ask, why is this ancient male figure wearing a wedding dress?
And the audience doesn't know.
The audience is dead silent. They don't know.
The speaker uses the audience's ignorance to demonstrate the absolute failure of literalism. If you look at a statue of Guanyin and you think it is literally a woman in a white dress, you have failed the escape room.
You're just looking at a statue.
Right. The speaker claims the wedding dress is a metaphor for spiritual purity and readiness. By doing this, the speaker is systematically breaking down the audience's reliance on physical images and sacred art.
It's the literal destruction of traditional sacred art. I mean, if the statue you have prayed to your whole life is actually just a misunderstanding, if the art is a lie, then all of your cultural heritage is worthless.
It strips away their foundation.
Yeah, you are entirely dependent on the teacher to tell you what the statue actually means. It completely isolates the follower from their own culture.
It creates a vacuum. And once the speaker has cleared away the milk, once they have shamed the desire for comfort and dismantled traditional literalism, they have to fill that vacuum with something else.
Right. Nature abhors a vacuum.
Exactly. If milk is for infants, and if the vessel cannot remain empty, what is the solid food the audience is supposed to be consuming? This leads to the most complex metallurgical and chemical metaphor in the entire lecture.
The alchemy of flour and bread. This is where the lecture shifts away from biology and moves into the physics of transformation.
It's a very stark dichotomy.
It is. The source creates this massive, insurmountable dichotomy between raw flour or wet dough and finished bread. As someone who loves to bake, The violence of this metaphor really struck me.
The functional distinction is vital to the speaker's point here. Flour, in its raw, unformed state, is merely powder.
It just blows away.
Right. Even if you add water and make a wet dough, it remains formless. It is a puddle.
Yeah.
The speaker's attitude toward this unformed state is derogatory in the extreme.
They don't pull any punches.
No, they explicitly state that raw flour or unformed dough is only fit to be fed to pigs or dogs. It is livestock feed. It has zero structural integrity.
But bread is entirely different. In this framework, bread represents a formed, disciplined person.
Someone who has been through the process.
Yes, a person who has been subjected to a rigorous process. If you think about the actual mechanics of baking, it is a deeply violent process for the dough.
Oh, for sure.
You take raw flour, you add water, and then you knead it. You punch it, you stretch it, you fold it back on itself repeatedly to develop the gluten network.
It's a lot of force.
And then you throw it into an oven at 450 degrees. You subject it to intense radiating heat. Only after enduring all that violence does it transform into something that holds its shape. It becomes a structured vessel.
The speaker establishes this firm baseline. Flour equals the unformed, undisciplined human. Bread equals the formed, disciplined human.
So what does this all mean for the stories in the text?
Well, once that cipher is locked in, they apply it to unlock some of the most famous miracles in biblical history. They specifically target the feeding of the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread and the feeding of the 4,000 with 7 loaves of bread.
Now, read literally, this is a catering miracle. Jesus is acting as a magical bakery, infinitely replicating physical food to feed a massive hungry crowd on a hillside.
Like a divine picnic.
Right. It's a story about divine provision of physical needs.
But the speaker mocks that literal interpretation relentlessly. They ask the room, essentially, do you really think the divine text is concerned with the picnic?
Of course they don't.
Do you think this is about physical calories? If bread represents formed, disciplined people, then the 5 loaves and the 7 loaves are not baked goods.
What are they?
They represent specific, highly disciplined teachers or foundational structured teachings that spiritually feed and form thousands of minds. It transforms a miracle of mass, catering into a miracle of mass ideological education.
So the bread is the teacher. That is wild. And the speaker takes this mathematical hermeneutic even further. They bring up an Old Testament command where Moses is instructed to place exactly 12 loaves of bread on the altar in the tabernacle.
12 specifically.
Yeah, why 12? The speaker argues this has nothing to do with God wanting a snack. It was a prophetic parable predicting the 12 disciples.
The math always has to mean something.
Right. The 12 loaves on the altar were a coded prophecy about 12 disciplined, formed men who would be offered up for divine purpose centuries later. But why do they rely so heavily on the math?
Mathematics provides an illusion of objective certainty. When you start connecting numbers across centuries, 5 loaves here, 12 loaves there, it feels like you are solving a complex algebraic equation.
It feels like you're unlocking a vault.
Exactly. It masks the deeply subjective nature of the interpretation. If the math lines up, the follower assumes the underlying logic must be flawless.
Even if the premise is crazy.
Right. And the speaker grounds this high-level numerology in everyday regional cultural touchstones to make it inescapable.
Yes, they do. They point to different factions in the room. They point to the people from Hainan and say, you eat rice noodle soup, which they call fen tang. Then they point to the people from Chongqing and say, you eat steamed buns, baovuzi or mantou. The underlying point is that whether you are eating a noodle, a steamed bun, or a baked loaf, you are eating flour that has been forced into a specific shape by a rigorous process.
It's all just variations of the vessel.
Exactly. It is a formed vessel.
They take it even deeper into ancestral traditions, too. The speaker mentions the Korean Chinese minority, the Gyeoksianzu people, and their specific customs for offering sacrifices at their ancestors' graves.
Oh, this part was really striking.
The custom dictates that they cannot just throw raw ingredients on the ground. They must place exactly 12 white cakes, or specifically 4 fish.
There's that math again.
Right. The speaker tells the audience that these are not just quaint cultural habits developed over generations. They are hidden prophetic traditions.
So the ancestors didn't even know what they were doing.
Exactly. The ancestors were acting out divine parables without even possessing the conscious knowledge of what they were doing.
This is a form of cultural erasure, though. By claiming that a traditional Korean funeral rite is actually just a forgotten prophecy about biblical disciples, you are stripping the culture of its own autonomous meaning.
You're hijacking it.
Totally. You were saying your ancestors didn't invent this out of respect for the dead. They were just blind actors in my theological play. It absorbs every distinct human culture into a monolithic spiritual code.
It absorbs the culture, and it absorbs the individual. What does this metaphor mean for the person sitting in the chair?
Yeah, what's the takeaway for them?
It means you are the clay. You don't pour water into a pile of wet clay. It just turns to mud and washes away. You have to take that clay, center it on a wheel, force it into a shape, and fire it in a kiln.
Only then can it hold value.
Right. The speaker is telling the audience, when you put bread on an altar, you aren't offering a snack to God. You are offering yourself. You are the bread.
Wow.
And crucially, the bread does not bake itself.
The lack of autonomy is terrifying. There is this deeply unsettling interaction in the transcript between the teacher and a student named Xiaojing that perfectly illustrates this erasure of identity.
Oh, the fairy tale exchange. This is a perfect example.
Exactly. Xiaojing is told by the teacher that in this spiritual reality, she represents Snow White. And Xiaojing actually pushes back slightly.
Which is rare in this setting.
Yeah, she says basically, actually, I wanted to be Cinderella. And the teacher shuts her down immediately. Yeah, no, I told you that you are Snow White.
It seems like a joke, but it's not.
On the surface, it reads like a lighthearted joke about Disney princesses. But look at the archetypes. Xiaojing wants to be Cinderella, which is a story about a girl who works hard, overcomes abuse, goes to a ball, and is chosen for love.
Cinderella has some agency. She makes choices.
Right, that's a rags to riches story with agency. The teacher says, no, you are Snow White. Snow White is poisoned. She's asleep in a glass coffin. She does absolutely nothing until a prince comes to wake her up.
She is entirely passive.
Completely passive.
The teacher is dictating the identity of the vessel. The flour does not get to decide what shape the baker forces it into.
The baker is in total control.
Yes. Personal preference is completely eradicated. You do not get to choose your shape. You only get to endure the process.
Which forces us to ask, what exactly is the process? We know flour must become bread. It must be formed. But a pile of dough sitting on a counter doesn't spontaneously rise.
It needs a catalyst.
Right. It needs an active ingredient to change its internal structure. And this brings us to the absolute core of the source material, the painful, inescapable reality of yeast.
The leaven. In the original text, the focus is on the biological mechanism of yeast. What does yeast actually do when introduced to dough?
It causes fermentation.
It causes violent internal change. It alters the fundamental chemistry of whatever it touches. It consumes sugars and releases gas, forcing the dough to expand.
In this parable system, yeast equals discipline. It represents the teachings and the severe corrections administered by the leader.
And it is not gentle.
No, the speaker makes it abundantly clear that this transformation is not a gentle, spa-like experience of self-discovery. It is deeply uncomfortable. The yeast stretches the dough.
It tears it apart from the inside.
Right. It tears the internal structure to create air pockets where there was once solid mass. It forces the vessel to expand beyond its original boundaries, which is inherently painful.
The speaker emphasizes this pain, and they demonstrate absolutely zero sympathy for anyone who resists it.
None at all.
If you refuse to be disciplined, if you reject the yeast because it hurts, the speaker strips you of your human dignity. They compare a resistant follower to an animal.
Like a literal beast.
Yes. They say that someone who hates correction is like a dog that bites you when you try to kick it out of the way. They use the term livestock to describe unyielding people, implying they are only fit for the slaughterhouse.
That is incredibly dark.
They even quote the book of Proverbs, "He who hates correction is stupid."
This is where we need to look at the psychological mechanics of feedback and control. Let's step away from the religious terminology for a second and look at a secular equivalent.
Okay, like what?
Think about an elite professional athlete and a high-level personal trainer. If you walk into a gym and say, I want to win an Olympic gold medal, the trainer is going to put you through absolute physical hell.
They're going to break you down.
Right. And if you start crying because your muscles are tearing or complaining that the diet is too strict, the trainer is going to look at you and say, if you don't want to hurt, you shouldn't be in the gym. Go home.
It's hardcore coaching.
Basically, yeah. But the trainer's logic makes sense in that context.
The gym analogy is useful, but we have to complicate it to match what the speaker is doing. In a gym, the trainer breaks your muscles down, but then you rest.
You recover.
Exactly. You heal, The muscle grows back stronger, and you eventually reach a state of peak performance where the baseline workouts don't hurt anymore.
The pain stops being so intense.
Right. But what this speaker is describing is a gym where the muscle is perpetually torn. The yeast never stops expanding. The discipline is a constant state of ontological restructuring.
Ontological restructuring. Let's break that down because the speaker actually divides yeast into two distinct categories to explain this.
Yes, not all yeast is good yeast.
Right. They warn about the Pharisees' yeast, which they call the devil's bread. Now, historically, the Pharisees were a sect known for their incredibly strict adherence to traditional laws and social customs.
Right. They were rule followers.
So in this lecture, their yeast represents worldly morality, human traditions, and societal rules of etiquette.
The speaker points out traditions like the ceremonial washing of hands before eating or adhering to strict codes of polite behavior.
Just being a
Right.
nice person.
Yes, it is the discipline of being recognized by society as a good, upstanding citizen.
And the speaker essentially tells the room that that is garbage. They say you can be a perfectly polite person, you can wash your hands, you can follow every law of the land, you can be universally beloved by your neighbors as a good human being.
And you will still fail.
Yeah, you will still fail the cosmic test and go to
Yeah.
hell because the Pharisees' yeast only changes your outward behavior. It is behavioral modification.
It's superficial.
It's like putting on really expensive matching gym clothes, spraying yourself with water, and taking selfies next to the treadmill. You look fantastic to society, but internally, your muscles haven't changed.
You are the devil's bread masquerading as righteousness.
Exactly.
Contrast that with the second type, God's yeast. This represents true divine discipline administered by the teacher.
The painful kind.
Yes, this yeast does not care about your manners. It completely transforms your inner reality. The speaker uses a specific phrase that means to completely change one's heart and mind.
To turn you into new bread.
Exactly, it turns you into a new bread. This is the ontological change. Ontology is the philosophical study of being. Behavioral modification changes how you act within a system, but ontological change alters your fundamental nature.
It changes what you actually are.
Yes, the speaker is demanding that the audience undergo a complete structural metamorphosis of their very being.
But here's the ultimate catch, the final lock on the escape room door. You cannot administer this yeast to yourself.
You need the baker.
Right. You cannot be the flour and the baker at the same time. By accepting this framework, the audience must accept the total, unquestioned authority of the teacher who is kneading the dough.
You have to surrender entirely.
You must submit to their discipline, regardless of how much psychological pain it causes, or else you prove yourself to be a stupid dog, mere livestock. It is a brilliant, terrifying mechanism designed to foster total surrender to the interpretative authority of the person standing at the front of the room.
It forces the listener into a corner. How do you react to genuine, cutting feedback? Not polite suggestions, but feedback that strikes at the core of your identity.
It's a lose-lose situation.
Do you act like the dog that bites back out of instinct, defending your fragile ego? Or do you allow the yeast of that criticism to enter you, to stretch you, to tear your internal structure apart so you can become something new?
And you have to pick the yeast.
By framing resistance as animalistic stupidity, the speaker makes it psychologically impossible for a devout follower to ever disagree with them.
Because if you disagree, you are just raw flour proving you belong with the pigs. It is an airtight, self-sealing system of logic.
It really is a masterclass in psychological control.
Let's take a breath and look back at the immense psychological architecture we've walked through today. We started with an emperor who was stripped of his historical reality and transformed into a prophetic black loach.
Teaching us that objective reality is an illusion.
Right. We learned that every seed, every field, and every vessel in these ancient texts is actually a secret metaphor for the teachings being implanted into our empty waiting hardware.
We explored the controversial dismissal of milk, too. The deeply unsettling idea that basic comfort and elementary teachings are not just insufficient, but actively harmful.
Creating spiritually stunted followers.
Yes, followers who are unprepared for a perpetual apocalypse.
And finally, we ended up in the bakery. We learned that we are the raw, formless dough, inherently useless and indebted to a divine purchaser. We learned that painful, relentless discipline is the yeast required to turn us into bread fit to be placed on an altar.
We are the vessel, but we do not get to choose our shape.
No, the baker decides if we are Cinderella or Snow White.
What stands out to me the most is the sheer inescapable gravity of this interpretative framework. Once you accept the initial premise that the literal world is just a dictionary of metaphors for your own human transformation,
The whole world shifts.
the entire universe becomes a classroom designed specifically for you. A trip to the grocery store, a chance meeting at a restaurant, a historical anecdote. Everything is decoded through the cipher of your own required discipline.
You are never off the clock.
Never.
It turns reality into a massive, high-stakes mirror that only reflects your spiritual progress, or lack thereof. And that leaves you, the listener, with a final idea to ponder.
A provocative thought.
Yeah. This source material forces a radical, almost violent shift in perspective. But let's take a piece of it out to the real world. If you were to assume, just for tomorrow, that every story you hear, every piece of difficult advice you were given, and every painful challenge you face isn't just a random collision of atoms.
What if it means something more?
Exactly. What if you view it as a specific parable hiding a reality meant only for you? How does that change the way you walk through the world?
It makes everything heavy.
When you encounter friction tomorrow, are you just going to read the surface text and react? Or are you going to look deeper at the abstract painting, trying to decode the blueprint? Are you just surviving the events of your life, or are you letting the yeast actually change your chemistry?